Out front now, retired Army Major General James Spider Marks and Jill Doherty, CNN contributor and former Moscow bureau chief for CNN. It's good to see you both tonight. Spider, we just heard in Fred's report there, Russia advancing on nearly all front lines. The Biden administration now calling on Ukraine to dramatically lower the recruitment age for Ukrainian soldiers from 25 to 18. General, is that enough to turn this around?
No, it's not enough. I think from the outset, this administration really didn't have a clear strategy in terms of what they wanted to try to achieve as a desired end step, even if that was an interim step toward a larger strategic objective. And so what you see right now is an administration that's on its way out, Ukraine, which has done incredibly well in this fight against the Russians. And clearly, the West has not lost. Ukraine has not lost. This is a narrative that we're going to see more of coming out of Moscow. But what we see now is, I hate to use the term stalemate, but what we see is a very well-defined tactical battle between two combatants. And clearly, Russia has the law of large numbers. They've got the manpower, they've got the capability to keep piling on. But yet, bear in mind, Moscow has lost close to 600,000 young men in this fight. So this has been an incredibly costly victory from them, maybe the definition of a Pyrrhic victory, if they want to use the word victory, but it's not over. The challenge is Russia doesn't have the capacity to further advance into Ukraine and threaten Kyiv and threaten well beyond where they are right now. Again, this is a very tactical fight going on. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, Ukraine is doing a wonderful job resisting that, but they also don't have the capacity to dislocate the Russian forces. So we're going to see this level, this volume of this intensity of fighting through the change of administration, where a negotiated settlement clearly will be on the table.
We're also hearing more and more, right, in hearing directly from Russia. Russian state TV today saying the U.S. is directly responsible for Ukraine's attacks inside Russia. Also this, mocking the U.S. Take a look.
Biden pardoned 2 turkeys. It's so touching, right? Now count how many people you've killed in 2 years. With your help, with your participation and provocation, you're killing millions of people and pardoned 2 turkeys.
Jill, there is an escalation in the rhetoric in what we're hearing from Russians, saying the U.S. is now directly involved in the conflict. How is that changing things?
Well, I think this is a big deal. What Russia essentially is doing is that Putin, in fact, himself, is saying that this is now not just a regional conflict, but this is now becoming a worldwide conflict. And that Russia is actually at war with NATO and the United States. And so if you play that out, what they're saying is, for a second, set aside Ukraine, but just look at what Putin is trying to say. We can go after the United States. We can go after NATO. And this is where you get that asymmetric war rhetoric that we just heard a couple of minutes ago. Mm-hmm. They can strike by carrying out sabotage in Europe. They could do something in Asia. There are a lot of things that they can do. They recently may have taken some steps in the Baltic Sea. So this is where it gets dangerous. But again, part of this is that the United States, we could argue that Biden held himself back because of his fear that it would go too far. And that temporizing ultimately was a bad policy. So this, I think the West has to be realistic, as Spider was saying, how dangerous this is. But on the other hand, it can't necessarily have Putin dictate and, make the West so afraid that it's incapable of taking any action.
And to that point, as we look at what may be to come, some of the reporting, which I hope you both heard from Oren Lieberman about some of what is being looked at. Donald Trump announcing General Keith Kellogg set to serve as his special envoy for Ukraine and Russia. Before we talk too much about what we've heard in terms of his proposals, Spider, you know him well. You served with him several times. Do you think he is someone who could be able to bring this war to an end?
Well, the thing about Keith Kellogg is he was an incredibly competent, very energetic, smart soldier. I don't know Keith as a politician, but I do know that he's been on the Trump team before, right? He was Vice President Pence's national security advisor. So he's intimate in terms of how our president thinks and what he's trying to achieve. So if you're looking for an envoy to go forward who has the complete credibility and can speak for the commander in chief, Keith is the guy to do it. The challenge is, can you get this is an issue for the Ukrainians and the Russians. Can we convince the Ukrainians that a ceasefire of some sort is in their best interest? If in fact that's the message, I can't speak for the administration, but if that's the message, that has to be crystal clear. That has to come straight from that envoy, Keith, from the president, indicating that this is the way forward. And I don't know that it's conditional, Ukraine's desire to have a ceasefire, if that's conditional for the United States to walk further down the path in terms of additional support. That remains to be seen.
Putin's patience is running thin. The Russian president's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, making it clear Russia will not put up with the damaging long-range missile attacks from Ukraine for much longer.
We have many proverbs that reflect the character of our people. Measure twice, cut once. I remembered one more proverb which Western officials should bear in mind in this situation. A Russian man takes a long time to get going. I'm sure the viewer knows what happens next.
What is next? Putin has, of course, put the U.S. on a nuclear notice, and Moscow is wasting no time mass-producing nuclear shelters. Just take a listen to what they're saying now on state TV.
I would like to remind the Germans where this is going. It will end with destroyed houses, because the Russians never surrender, and no one has ever defeated the Russians.
So if Germany were to be attacked, it would lead to another world war. And according to the retired general that Donald Trump just tapped to be America's envoy to Ukraine, the U.S. and its allies are on the cusp of a global assault.
No, I don't think World War III has begun, but we're right on the precipice. A simple spark can spin things right out of control.
Now, General Keith Kellogg has been tasked with leading negotiations to end the nearly 3-year war. Sources telling CNN it's still too early to say just what Team Trump's strategy is there, though Kellogg has argued Washington should only arm Ukraine on the condition that Kyiv enter peace talks with Russia. Meantime, Trump's pick for National Security Advisor Mike Waltz has been considering several proposals to end the war. Oren Lieberman is out front live at the Pentagon. So, Oren, what more do we know about these proposals that the Trump administration is reviewing right now?
Well, President-elect Donald Trump is likely to have some sort of ending to the Russia-Ukraine war, or at least negotiations, fairly high on his priority list when he comes in on January 20th. He has claimed the war would never have started if he was president, and said at least once on the campaign trail that he could end the war in a day. The question is how, and that's where the specifics, the details, have been very short. Retired General Keith Kellogg, who served in the first Trump administration, is one of those speaking with Mike Waltz, the incoming National Security Advisor, to lay out at least a potential plan or an idea for how to proceed here. And his idea, according to two sources familiar with the matter, is to essentially hold off on arming Ukraine unless they're willing to partake in peace negotiations with Russia. But that's only one of the options being considered here. Rick Grenell, who was Trump's former ambassador to Germany, has a different idea, and that's the creation of autonomous zones along the front line and the areas where we have seen fighting, where Russian forces have taken territory in Ukraine. And there have been even some other ideas. Sebastian Gorka, who will be a deputy in the National Security Council, suggested arming Ukraine even more and said that's what the Trump administration might do. So there's quite a spectrum of options that have been put forward. One of the sources with whom CNN spoke said it's really up to Trump in the end, and he could change his mind at the very last second. But at least we see some ideas from those who could play a crucial role in shaping this in the incoming administration. And it's certainly worth noting that General Keith Kellogg, who was one of those who put forward an idea, was picked by Trump to be the special envoy to Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, it's a good point. Oren Lieberman, appreciate the reporting tonight. Thank you.